Salutations, my dearest friends. My name is Samantha, and today I'm going to be talking about some really messy books, a lot of drama, a lot of angst, but I really love them. Hi, hello, how are you? Welcome or welcome back to my channel. I am really excited to be filming today. I've had this idea kind of like toying in my head of how I wanted to film it, where I really wanted to talk about some books that I did enjoy. These are like the types of books that I binge read, I was super addicted to when I was reading them, couldn't put them down, and really enjoyed them, but I can acknowledge that they were kind of messy, a lot of angst. Maybe some of these books have some tropes or trigger warnings that I typically don't like to read and typically stray away from, but for whatever reason these books did it for me. I do want to be very clear and intentional with this video and say that I'm not trashing any of these books by calling them messy. When I say messy, I'm meaning like the couple's journey was messy. Either they had to go through a lot individually as a character and overcome a lot of things, or just the road to our happily ever after was really bumpy, really messy. One of my biggest pet peeves is when people call romance trash or silly or cheesy. Like, that's a really big pet peeve of mine, so I'm definitely not doing that with this video. I don't shame any tropes or romance books. You're not going to see that here on my channel. So when I say messy, I say it with like a lot of love. I'm cool with dark romances. I'm cool with threesomes, foursomes, and more sums. Like, just give it to me all. Like, I'm into all of it. Let's jump right in. I have 6 books to talk about, and some of them are in series, so I'm just gonna hop right in. The very first book and series I want to talk about is the Rock Hard Beautiful series. This is available on Kindle Unlimited. I have a difficult time pronouncing this author's last name. It is C.M. Stunek? I am not sure. What I'm talking about is a rock star reverse harem romance, and it is a good old time. The 3 books in the series is Groupie, Rhodey, and Moxie. I don't want to do any spoilers, so I'm mainly going to be talking about the first book in the series, but honestly, I read these books back to back to back. I was so addicted to this wild ride. The story follows our heroine Lilith, who is going through a really hard time in a long-term relationship, and her boyfriend cheated on her, so she doesn't have a place to live because she was living with her boyfriend. Not doing that great financially, and then unfortunately in the beginning of the book her father passes away. Actually on her way to see her dad before he passed away, but he passed away as she was traveling, and she is just absolutely devastated. She has no money, no family, and not even like a working car. She is just in a really rough spot. She ends up going to the concert, and she ends up meeting Paxton, who is the lead singer in this rock band, and she instantly just forms like this connection with the 5 rock stars. Again, this is a reverse harem. If you're not familiar with reverse harem, it's really having its moment on BookTube, which I love. I've been talking about it a lot recently. I swear I'll read other stuff, but right now I'm in this vibe. But basically, a reverse harem is one heroine with multiple love interests, usually 3 to 5 love interests. Those are Paxton, Michael, Ransom, Muse, and Copeland. And they all have really like rough past. Meets them, has a connection with them, and actually hops on their tour bus and stays with them. They invite her to stay with them as they're doing their tour across the states and even internationally. So it's just her romance with these 5 rock stars on a moving tour bus. It's very steamy, very wild. And the reason I say that this book is messy is because our characters went through some stuff. They have very dark past. Like, every single trigger warning that you can think of, it is in this book. Loss of a loved one, drug addiction, mentions of suicide, murder. There's murder in here. Abuse, sexual assault. There's like literally every single trigger warning that you can think of, and it's very intense at first. Like, there is literally in the beginning of the book, there's so much information given to you because you have 6 characters, 6 different point of views. I'm sorry I didn't mention that, but it is 6 different point of views, so you bounce between characters and get each of their stories. Obviously each book kind of solidifies the relationship with the boys and with Lilith, but there's just a lot of trauma, a lot of trigger warnings, and it's really messy. There definitely is a plot, but the plot is also a lot of the steamy bits and the relationship that she has with the boys. Yeah, I think the reason I like this series so much is it reads very like early Wattpad days, circa 2010. You know, I don't know if you guys ever read Wattpad. I read romance books on Wattpad when I was like in high school, and this gave me that vibe. Our next book I have talked about on my channel as well, and that is Lovers by Fiona Cole. This is the second book in the Voyeur series. I don't really think you have to read the series in order, but I do really like the first book. The first book has a lot of angst as well. The second book I particularly liked, and this is Jackson's story. So the entire series follows this very specific club where basically you can like pay people to like act out any type of fantasy that you can imagine, and it's like you can like watch them perform it in front of you kind of situation. Anyways, Jackson is a performer at one of the clubs, and he's opening up one of his own clubs that's like an extension of Voyeur. It's a bar. Jackson has always been in love and really pined after his old college best friend Jake, but him and Jake had a huge falling out in college and haven't really talked. They had a really messy hookup interaction with one another that didn't leave in a good note. Jake wasn't really comfortable with his sexuality. In this book, Jackson is bisexual, but Jake is still kind of discovering himself, so they just have a big falling out and they don't really see each other again until Jackson is opening up this new bar and he ends up seeing Jake again because he works for a marketing company that is helping the bar out. The reunion is kind of messy because Jake is engaged to our heroine Karina. They're childhood friends who, like I said, are engaged, so it's kind of messy. Jackson really doesn't think he stands a chance, but little does he know, Jake and Karina are kind of going through a slump in their relationship and they want to spice things up, so they end up inviting Jackson into their relationship kind of as a third, just to spice things up, and it follows that dynamic. It is so messy. Like, I wouldn't call this a love triangle. I wouldn't really call this polyamorous. Like, there's a lot of jealousy involved. I don't even know like how like to describe this because I don't want to do any spoilers, but let me just say it's not polyamorous. They don't all have a happily ever after. There's a lot of messiness in it. They do hurt each other in the process. I just loved the chemistry in this book so much. Like Jackson, ugh, I loved Jackson as a character and I just wanted him to be so happy, and like this book was so angsty, but I was just so like dedicated to seeing Jackson's happily ever after that this book was amazing for me. And yeah, I just, lots of twists and turns to get to the happily ever after, but it was so good. Another one that I really liked was Top Secret by Sabrina Bowen and Elle Kennedy. This is a male-male romance, and it also kind of has trigger warnings for cheating. Ugh, I hate that trope so much. Like, you cannot convince me cheating is cute or romantic, but I mean, like, these books do it in a certain way where it's still really messy, but it's like, it's part of the book, it's part of the journey, and I still liked it. So in the beginning of the book, Keaton is in a long-term relationship with his girlfriend. He loves her, but again, they're going through a little bit of a rut, so she decides to kind of suggest that they have a threesome to spice up their relationship, and he's hesitant, of course, but he ends up deciding to do it for her, and he ends up going on like this college dating app to like find a guy to bring into their relationship, and he ends up meeting Luke. I don't really tell his girlfriend that he's doing this. It's meant to be as a surprise, but him and Luke end up forming a connection instantly. Like, they're chatting back and forth on this dating app. They're definitely towing the line of Keaton maybe not being totally faithful in his relationship. Still, like I said, it's messy. It is messy. Starts off as something that he's doing for his girlfriend. He really starts doing for himself. And this is another book, my hair was in my way. This is another book where our hero isn't completely confident in his sexuality. Luke already kind of knows like where he stands. Enemies to lovers romance because they both live in the same frat house. They don't know that they live in the same frat house at first. They only know each other by like their dating username. They live in the same frat house, and Keaton is like the spoiled rich boy jock who plays his music really loud and thinks he's a hotshot. And Luke is like this quiet guy who goes to the college on scholarship and just keeps to himself. So it's definitely an opposites, enemies to lovers situation. This book, because like Keaton and Luke were so good for each other. Like to me, they were like the definition of like true soulmates. I just loved reading about them. There were so many things like that I just loved in this book. Like their chemistry was amazing. The way the author does it is just that Keaton is kind of like discovering himself and finding what makes him happy, and he really has like no intention of hurting anyone, which I think is like the key distinct factor of why I loved it so much. Another one that is messy but amazing is the Palm South University series by Candy Steiner. This one is interesting. Okay, so it's a long series. It has 6 books so far, and I even think like the 7th book is coming out really soon, but they read really fast. This is a series you have to read in order because they all connect, but they read super fast because they're almost told in like an episode form. Basically, the way they describe this is a mixture of the show Greek and Gossip Girl, so very high drama, high angst, multiple characters. I think it starts off with 6 characters, but you get introduced to more characters as the series goes on. Follows these 6 characters, and they're all in college, and they're all in frats and sororities, and like that's the bulk of the story, is just like sorority Greek life. And cliffhanger, so much drama, so much angst, and it follows like this fun ride with 6 characters who are hilarious and super flawed, but it's just like dealing with real world stuff. Like again, there's so many trigger warnings in this book. There's trigger warnings for miscarriage, abortion, drug addiction, cheating, but it's like you're really just following like the true struggles of these characters, and it feels very authentic. I'm gonna be honest, my camera died and I got distracted on TikTok, so I don't remember where I left off. I know I was talking about the Palm South University series, but what was I saying? Of angst, lots of love triangles, and you guys know I love my love triangles. There's nothing more messy than a love triangle, and like, give that to me. Give that to me. That is like my favorite thing, is a love triangle when like a character has to like choose between 2 and she's torn and there's angst, and ugh. And even better if the characters, all 3 of them end up together and it's like a polyamorous situation. Even better. But that doesn't happen in this book. Right. The next series I want to talk about is the Wolf Hotel series by Nina West, or K.A. Tucker. She has 2 different pen names. Anyways, the entire series follows Henry and Abby. Abby, our heroine, comes from like a very small southern town, very sheltered. She has a breakup with her boyfriend, and she decides that she just wants to like reinvent herself. She wants to like move out of her town and just kind of like live her life and discover herself. Ends up getting a job at a hotel chain in Alaska. It's like this fancy schmancy hotel. She flies over there, and it's not what she expected. Ends up meeting Henry, who is the CEO of the entire company. This is an office romance plus an age gap romance plus a taboo romance, and there's BDSM elements in it. It's a lot. It's a very fast-paced taboo romance that I really liked. There's quite a bit of scandal in this series. Hero has a lawsuit of sexual assault going on. Obviously, our hero like didn't assault anyone. The person is kind of like extorting him for money, so there's drama with that. Obviously, there's like the taboo element of them having to keep their relationship a secret because of their age gap. There's some trigger warnings for cheating, and our characters aren't that great at communicating, but it's just through everything they still always like fall back in love with each other, and that's what was so interesting about this book. And it was just like such a good office romance. Like, I'm not someone who reads a lot of office romances, but this one was just super addicting. The last series I'm gonna talk about, and there is a reason I saved it for last, because this has very like strong opinions on BookTube, and that's the Foxhill Court series by Nora Sokoviak. I'm sorry, it's called the All for the Game series. I always call it the Foxhill Court series because that's the first book in the series. Okay. People either love this series, or they hate it. Like, there is no in between. You have the people who have like fan art. There's so much fan art for this series that it's just so fun. And then you have people who just like trash review it on Goodreads. So it's no in between, and I can see why. Let me explain it real quick. So there's 3 books in the series. You have the Foxhill Court, the Raven King, and the King's Men. They're all very short. I don't think any of them are over like 200 pages each. You will very dark past. He's actually running for his father, and he is kind of like a secret identity as he is running from dark things in his past and his family. and he ends up getting involved in this sport. The sport is called Exy, and it is a fictional sport that the author creates, but it's kind of a mix of like lacrosse and soccer and rugby. Like if you just like blended all of those sports together, that's what this is. So he ends up getting involved in the sport and ends up playing for a college team. Interesting about the team that he gets signed to is that this entire team is a band of misfits. Coach builds this team with a bunch of people who have a broken past and they're all struggling with someone, and they all build this found family around this specific sport, and they play other teams that kind of tie into our main character's dark past. It's a male-male romance, but it is so slow burn. Like I struggle to call this book a romance because the romance doesn't really build until the end of the second book, beginning of the third book. Another book that has a lot of trigger warnings. It's trigger warnings for suicide, drug addiction, overdose, child abuse, sexual assault. There's just a lot going on in this book, and I can see why some people don't love this book because it can be a little bit problematic. When I first started this book, I wasn't a huge fan when I found out who the love interest was. Love interest was hard to like at the beginning. Like I remember reading this book and thinking like there was absolutely no way in hell you were gonna convince me that these characters needed to be together, that I would like the love interest. He kind of like spiked our main character's drink, and that to me was just like a super red flag. I know a lot of people find that problematic, but once you continue with the series, all of a sudden I liked our love interest, and I was like, how the author did that? How did the author do that? Drew is the character that I'm talking about, and you really could not convince me to like him at all in the first book, but in the second and third book, like when you learn his backstory, and the author did such a good job at kind of explaining each character's backstory. Like I said, they all come from a very dark past and have dealt with a lot of trauma, and once you discover like what they run through, their actions make a lot of sense. Not that they're justified, but it just is again that found family trope of broken people finding other broken people and somehow finding solace in each other and hope and love and family. And it is actually really beautiful, although you go through a very messy ride as you go there. The plot is a little bit telenovela-y, like it's kind of unrealistic, but it's also very interesting and high drama. I really did like this series. I like the fan art. I have a whole reading vlog of me reading the series. It's one of my earlier videos, which is kind of embarrassing because my camera quality sucked and I was so awkward talking to the camera. But I mean, it's out there in the world if you want to see me read it. Alright, so those are all of the books that were pretty messy, but I just loved the wild, angsty drama that it provided. I know I was chatting for a really long time. My camera died and overheated. I charged it and then it died and overheated again. So that means I just need to wrap it up. As always, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to spend time with me. It means the world to me. I forgot my outro. I'm a mess in this video. I hope you guys are all having a wonderful day, staying happy and healthy, and I'll see you next time. Bye.